Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
Let me say this first and foremost. My dad wasn't a great person by any means. He walked out on us when I was just 6, and within a year got married to another woman. He has his own family now and 2 children, so my mom's anger with him is justified. So, when I moved out to college, I found my dad on Facebook and tried to contact him. I had a lot of questions and needed to hear why he left our family, only to find a new one just a year later. I didn't expect him to text me back, but he did, and we met up. I was anxious and overwhelmed at the same time, and the moment I saw him, I felt an anger I didn't know was inside me. I thought I was over him, and he meant nothing in my life, so it was a shock to see how great of a reaction he could elicit out of me. Anyway, the meeting wasn't great, and instead of leaving me with any answers, it just left me more frustrated. He did try to reach out to me a few more times after that, but I blocked him everywhere as I wanted nothing to do with him. I didn't want to face the feelings of resentment that I was harboring, so I chose to run away. In my third year of college, I received a call from my father's wife because he had apparently left me $100,000 in his will. I didn't know how to feel about that. Years of no contact. He left me to grow up without a dad. Our only meeting was a disaster. And yet he had left me a sum of money that couldn't be considered small by any means. I was conflicted about what to do about this last gesture of his. It didn't fix what happened in the past, and in no way is it even nearly enough to forgive him. But $100,000 is a lot of money, and I can't just say I don't want it. So I decided to go to his funeral. I wanted to see him one last time and finally confront my emotions. I needed to let go of any attachment I had with his memory and move forward. So I called my mom and told her about his death and that I wanted to go to his funeral. I didn't tell her about the money he left me because I knew anything from him would only piss her off. She even denied child support from him when he asked for divorce, so there was no way she was going to accept this money. But apparently, hearing me say I wanted to go to his funeral was enough of a trigger for her to go off on me. She started talking about how that man brought nothing but pain and suffering to our lives, and he doesn't deserve our sympathy even in death. She said that he must have manipulated me somehow, because now I've forgotten what he did and want to forgive him. She blamed me for loving him even though I knew how horrible he was to her, and nothing I said to calm her down had any effect on her. I remember that I hung up on her that time, and later that weekend when I went home, the same thing repeated. She was trying to guilt trip me into believing that somehow me attending the funeral would mean I'm choosing him over her, which wasn't the case at all. I wanted to do that for myself, and because I knew this was my last chance to tell him, I wouldn't let the thought of him ruin my life. I was trying to let go of something that negatively affected me, but my mom somehow twisted it into something sinister on my part. Our arguments didn't stop just at that, and when I finally ended up going to the funeral, she told me that I don't have any place in her home. She said that I've made my decision the minute I went out to see him and I'm not welcome anymore. Instead of arguing more about how ridiculous she sounded, I packed my bag and left my home forever. I was in my third year of college, and the money I got from my father covered the rest of my education and living expenses. I took up a part-time job to save up in case of emergencies and got by. I was busy struggling with everything, so I didn't even get the chance to think about how my relationship with my mom had changed. And before I knew it, she was a stranger to me, and I had moved on with my life. Yesterday, 7 years later, I received a call from my stepbrother. I didn't even know I had. He called me to tell me that my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and isn't going to make it. He told me that she was talking about how her only regret in life is losing me And if she could go back in time, she would like to change our whole conversation about my dad's funeral. He gave the address to the hospital where she was admitted and asked me to see her one last time, but I am conflicted about going to see her. She was harsh with her words when she blamed me for loving my father without even knowing my true reason for attending the funeral. She basically kicked me out of the house and didn't leave me a choice in our relationship. She ended our family, and I just had to accept the fact that I'm all alone and no one's got my back. And now that she's sick, I should go running to her just so she could have some peace of mind? Do I owe her that when she intentionally destroyed my peace of mind all those years ago? Would I be an a hole if I didn't go meet her and let her pass without getting to reconcile with me? I really need some advice here. What should I do? Should I protect myself and think about my own feelings, or should I put her dying wish above everything else? I went to meet her. A lot of you told me that meeting her wouldn't change the past and wouldn't make anything worse. We already didn't have any relationship, so there's no way we could destroy our bond. The only outcome of me going to see her can be either me remembering that I despise her for what she did to me, or us reconciling, which would make things better for me too. And I agree with most of you, so I went to see her at the hospital. I didn't know what to expect. I did a search on Google how a person with stage 4 pancreatic cancer looks just to prepare myself, but nothing could even come close to the real thing. When I saw her through the window, I had to take a step back and take deep breaths. Cancer really is a horrible disease, and nothing kills you more slowly than cancer. I could barely recognize my mom. I remembered her as a young, vibrant woman who was proud of her looks and took extra care to maintain the pink in her skin. Now she looked bony and chalky white. When I finally met her, she was crying. One look at her face and I knew it was the right thing to do. I gently hugged her and told her that I am still mad, but I never stopped loving her. I tried to explain to her how she was the only parent for me and what she thought was wrong. But she didn't let me finish. She told me that we shouldn't waste time in discussing the past and should spend our time together making happy memories. So that's what I'm going to do. I wanted to thank you all who advised me to go visit her because if I hadn't, I would be left with only regrets. I've been visiting my mom every second or third day. It's hard to go there every day because it takes about 90 minutes to go to the hospital, and I can't juggle work and visits. But whatever little time we get to spend together, I'm making sure it's all fun and there's nothing sad about it. But it's hard to keep doing it because one way or the other, we keep brushing past the subject of our past. So lately, I've taken to reading books to her. She always enjoyed novels, but her condition has worsened so much that she isn't able to read by herself. She gets exhausted very easily, and even when I read, she sometimes ends up falling asleep. The activities sound like normal things that wouldn't have any lasting impact in our day to day lives. But I've come to know that even small things are very precious when you know it's the last time you get to do it. Anyway, I just wanted to update here because many people were asking about mom. She passed away about 10 days ago. I thought her death would affect me deeply, but surprisingly, I'm okay. I'm glad for the time I got to spend with my mother. In the last few days I spent with her, we even talked about my father. She apologized to me for behaving like she did when I told her I wanted to attend his funeral. She said that she understands how, even though she's my mother, I had a right to choose whether or not I wanted my father in my life, and she had no say in it. We talked about how we both regret going no contact all those years ago. I feel like somehow she made me learn to live without her, and I already knew how to say goodbye. Her funeral was yesterday, and my stepbrother and stepfather arranged it. I wanted to contribute, but they refused. It's understood that we can't be a family, and the only link between us is dead now. But still, they were kind enough to let me just grieve in peace. So that's what I've been doing. I just wanted to update here one last time because it felt like you've been a part of my life, and the replies you all leave me were very helpful. NTA, it's clear that your mom was delusional and she never moved on from her anger and resentment towards your father. She tried to bind you into a small narrative of her story, even though you had every right to choose what and how you wanted to live your life. So you're definitely not the a hole here. You don't owe her anything, and if you choose not to go, it'll be your decision. That's for your own good. NTA, you wouldn't be an a hole if you decide not to go. But I just want to say that you should think long and hard about what you want to do. You might end up having regrets if you decide to hold on to hate and not grab the last chance to talk to her. I, 30 female, was having dinner at my sister, 40 female, house. During dinner, I asked my nephew, 14 male, how he was liking high school and if he had made any new friends. He shrugged and didn't seem enthusiastic about giving me an answer. My sister started pressuring him to answer. She then started teasing him about having a crush on someone and asking what her name was. My nephew got very upset and snapped at my sister, saying that he didn't want to answer because he didn't have any friends. And even if he did have a crush on someone, no one would want him because he was fat. My nephew is 256 pounds. He likes to play video games and spends most of his free time laying on the couch eating chips and gaming. Now, my entire family is very large. My brother in law is 450 pounds, sister is 270. They never pay attention to what they eat and just eat what they want. I used to be 300 pounds, but started dieting and exercising and am now 225 pounds. I understand the struggle with binge eating and how difficult it is to lose weight. So, after hearing the anger and disgust in his voice, I told him that he was right. He was fat. I told him he had two options. He could either start watching what he ate and start an exercise routine to lose weight, or he could keep overeating and stay fat. If he wanted help in losing weight, I could offer him advice. If he decided he didn't want to lose weight, then he needed to learn how to own being fat. Because unless he made some drastic changes, he'll just keep getting bigger. So, if he didn't want to make those changes, then he needs to start learning how to accept being fat and how some people won't like him because of his weight. The choice was his to make. My nephew got up and stormed off when I finished talking. Later that day, my sister called me and told me that my nephew had been crying because of the stuff I had said and wanted me to apologize for being mean to her son. I didn't think I said anything cruel or unreasonable, but I figured I'd check. AITA? After reading through most of the comments, I'd like to clarify a couple of things. 1. I know roughly what my family members weigh because weight comes up in conversations. For example, when my sister told me they had to get a special scale for their house because their old one isn't able to measure over 450 pounds, and my brother in law broke it. 2. My sister has a home gym, elliptical, treadmill, stationary bike, and workout videos. And my nephew has a bike. So while the blame for my nephew's weight rests solely on his parents' shoulders, he is getting old enough to start making his own choices about health. Also, I have offered several times to go biking, walking with him, telling him that he can set the pace and decide how far we go. I just be there for moral support. He doesn't want to. Okay, it seems like most people agreed with the message I was telling him, but think I suck on delivery. I think That is fair. I'm not a very sensitive person and often see things through facts and forget about feelings. He was displaying incredible vulnerability and clearly distraught about people at school bullying him and calling him fat. So you also called him fat? I get what you were trying to do, tough love, but I don't think it was appropriate here or helpful. You should have first addressed his sadness and emotions and then offered to help him to make changes slowly if he wanted, and then emphasize that it was okay if he didn't want to. You aren't his parent. He obviously needs to lose weight for his health, but this was not the time or place to establish this. YTA. I think I would have just said, yeah, you're fat. I used to be fat too. Being fat is something that can change, and being skinny can change too. But you don't have to worry about that because you're a great person. You're kind, interesting, and fun. They, on the other hand, are a-holes. You may not believe it now because things are kind of crappy, but you'll find your tribe someday. But those guys will likely always be a-holes, and most of the time outside of high school, being an a-hole doesn't work. If one day you want to work out, we can always do that together. Nothing in life is permanent. YTA. This happened last week. I, 18 male, was talking to my dad and stepmother about the fact I had chosen to change my last name back to my original one. They married when I was 8 years old, and at the time they wanted one family name. So my dad, sister, and I took her name because she had 4 kids with the same name as her versus the 3 of us. Neither my sister and I wanted to change our names. Our last name was both our mom and dad's name. They'd shared a last name but were not related. So it was not just who we had been up to that point, but it was something we shared with our mom, who died when I was 6 and my sister was 5. Our argument against it was shot down, however, because they told us it would be easier to live as a family with the same name. Having her last name never felt right to me. I never saw her as my mother, and I don't have the same kind of bond with her that I had with my mom or have with my dad. I had voiced as a teenager that I would change it back sometime, but they ignored me. Once I made the decision to do this, now that I'm an independent adult, I decided to discuss it with them. It was not well received, and the discussion last week became very heated and intense, with them telling me not to, with a lot of talk around how I was being mean, and how I had lived with her name longer than my original one, and people knew me by it. At that point, my sister chimed in that he and I would both go back to the original name, and she'd started saving once she learned from me what the process is and how much it costs. This was a fuel added to their fire. It got out of hand. So I walked out on the conversation and left the house and went back to my dorm. I then sent a text saying I had given them the chance to hear it from me, but I would not discuss it further, and it was happening. They called me childish and told me I was not behaving like a man, that men don't walk out mid conversation, and that they are not manipulative and refuse to discuss things. AITA? NTA at all. You are behaving like a man. You have taken a decision. You were prepared to discuss it, and you won't give in to bullying and manipulation. They are being childish. When they didn't get their own way, they resorted to name calling and harassment. As for having the new name for longer than the old one, this is nonsense. You had your old name for the whole of your life, and they took it away from you. They never wanted a discussion. They wanted to tell you what to do. Then they got angry because those days are over. NTA, I get they're hurt because they tried so hard to make you merge as one family unit, but you feel how you feel. The only thing I'll say is that they can now financially blackmail you. You're not self sufficient yet. And they can say, oh, really? Well, if you're not a member of this family, then you don't need to live here once you're legal or our money to attend higher education. Be ready for that, because if they were so insistent, they might go nuclear to get what they want. Probably not wise for your sister to have said something either when she's dependent on them even longer. NTA. Real men don't bully and ignore their children and change their name without their consent. Your father is the only one who did not behave like a man when he tried to erase your mother from your life. He failed you and your sister as a parent, and he and his wife's idea of being a man screams of toxic masculinity. You, on the other hand, were mature and respectful despite their disgraceful childish behavior. You gave them the facts and removed yourself when they tried to bully you. That's more a man than your father has ever been. Well done, OP. Your mother would be proud of you. Please keep an eye on your sister. They can't punish you, but she still has to live there, and they may emotionally and mentally abuse her in